Natasha, I can never tell you you're not in the weeds.
This is to prevent animals that come in the office. So
Oh, is
now
that
you
right?
can't see my parade of dogs and cats.
Yeah, we have animals in our office too, but that'll be, we can discuss that at a later date. So,
Sure.
Madam Clerk, we're okay to start, are we?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. My apologies for a little bit of a delay here. Glad to get together for the Special Events Advisory Committee. It's June 11th, and we're at 9:35 actually. Called to order this meeting. First of all, of course, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Mi'kmaq people, and here in Nova Scotia, particularly HRM, we consider ourselves all to be treaty people. Looking for approval of the minutes from the April 30th, 2025 meeting.
It's Ross. I'll move.
Ross, thank you very much. Are you a seconder?
I can second.
Natasha, thank you. All in favor? So we now have official minutes. The approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Madam Clerk, any additions or deletions?
No additions or deletions received from the clerk's office.
So anything from the committee? Seeing none, if someone can move the order of business, that would be great. Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Gillis. All those in favor? We now have an agenda. So business arriving out of the minutes. Seeing none. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. Seeing none. Consideration of deferred business. None. Any correspondence, Madam Clerk, or petitions?
No correspondence or petitions received from the clerk's office.
Anything from the committee? Seeing none from the committee. So we get to the heart of our meeting today. We have a presentation. It's on the regional event strategy update. I believe, Billy, you're going to lead that. Is that correct?
Yeah, alongside Mark People, who's here from Discover Halifax as well.
Oh, is Mark online? I didn't realize he was online. Oh, there we are, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah, good to see you, Mark. I didn't realize you were online. Billy, maybe you could, I don't know if everyone's met Mark. Maybe you could introduce Mark and then I'll hand it all over to you guys.
Yeah, great. So everyone, thanks for taking the time for this. Mark is our VP at DH with festivals and events. Been on board with DH now, Mark. I think she's coming already somehow. And is it 2 years coming already? No.
Couple months short of 2 years now, yeah.
Yeah. Geez, time's flying. So Mark has been really leading the way for us here, developing the new Halifax regional event strategy. And a lot of this work stemmed from a motion at council in 2022 to review our framework policy and sort of dive into the way that we're going to deal with major event bids moving forward. And what came from that as well was a strategy that DH also had. And so we merged them together when we went into our consultation sessions, and we merged both projects into one so that the same person would have the vision for both pieces. And so far we're in the beginning stages. We know we're around phase 2 right now, and Mark's going to walk us through some of the things that we've done so far, what we've heard. We had over about 30 engagement sessions, one-on-ones with people from external private business, nonprofit. We've also had some of our signature events in place. We had different sessions amongst our Indigenous community, our African Nova Scotian community, and a one-on-one at Halifax Hall with the Acadian community. And we had a really well-rounded, balanced approach to this piece. And we're hearing some really great things, both good and bad, but things that we know we can solve. So it's exciting work, but there's a lot to be done for sure. And I'll let Mark dive in a little deeper into it for us as well.
Yeah. We can go, do you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah.
So I thought I would start today, be talking for a few minutes. I want to go through some of the background of the project itself for a couple of minutes, and then we'll dive into some of what we heard and some of the reports that have come back from our consultant team. So we started this project officially late 2024 when we were really able and comfortable to move forward. And we're obviously at a pretty key inflection point in the development of the strategy and the policy itself. And that is as Billy alluded to, and we'll see in a second, the end of our major engagement sessions and the beginning of actually using that information to craft a strategy and a framework to move forward with. So we know, and so there are some of the reasons why we started this, and we know that there are some challenges within the region, but particularly in this industry, that there is so much opportunity in Halifax and across this region for events to build the region that we are in, but some pretty significant strain on their operations, and with organizers stretched quite thin. We know that there's some infrastructure challenges and support systems that have remained largely stagnant for a long time. And we're really just not meeting the current needs of the industry and the current needs of the region as well. A lot of positives, though, that are coming out that we'll see in a second as well. There's some pretty, and as Billy mentioned, some unprecedented collaboration across the partners and across the industry happening in Halifax right now, which is a really wonderful thing to see, and quite possibly amongst the best working relationships in this industry in Canada for sure. There's some really strong institutional and political interest as well in this work, and there's incredible demand from the public and from visitors for more experiences, higher quality experiences, whatever that happens to be. Billy, we can go to the next slide. So really, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve here is shifting from reacting to trying to shape what our future is. We don't want to be chasing outputs, but instead defining objectives and outcomes of what we want to get out of events and these experiences. And more importantly, I think a lot of scattered efforts into some pretty aligned intent. So really what we're trying to do is create a roadmap, sort of create our own path through this particular moment. And we want to do it with intention and with purpose. So the strategy itself that we're working on, that's supported by the policy work that is going on concurrently, does have a 10-year outlook, and we are expecting 3 to 5 years worth of key actions that we can take in order to achieve that strategy. So we are trying to look into the future, and we are trying to create the future that we want and the future that Halifax wants within our little world. Just to a little bit of background on this, we're doing this as a partnership. So there are 4 main partners involved in this particular project. Obviously, I'm here from Discover Halifax. Billy from HRM, we are attached at the hip for the last couple of months. It really feels like. We do have the province at the table through Events Nova Scotia as well, and we do expect the province to be entering into a process to develop a provincial event strategy over the next 12 months, and they are at the table with us to make sure that we are aligned through both efforts. We also have Events East as well working with us. The consultant team, it's a consortium, an international consortium working together on this. They have some pretty significant international experience. If you haven't met them, they worked with Scotland and Event Scotland. They've done strategies with Liverpool, Auckland, Major Events New Zealand, and I'm not going to go through their resume, but there's approximately 100 pages worth of events and international events and major multi-sport events that they have worked on, produced, done feasibility on throughout their careers. We also pull together an advisory committee to give us some input, and a bit of a sounding board, and provide some validation of direction as we're developing the strategy. So it's about 20 people who sit on it. It's chaired by Tennille from the Jazz Fest. We've pulled together signature events of all kinds. We've pulled together leaders from sports, from hotels, from small business, economic development, and across the board to make sure that we have as representative a group as we possibly can. One of the reasons, and this has been very important to us from the beginning, this group is really helping us to make sure that the strategy that we end up with at the end of this particular project is really one that isn't top down, but one that is really built collaboratively and co-created with our industry partners as well. Excuse me. Just a little bit of where we are right now. So we started our engagement process, our phase 1 insights and discovery back at the end of April. We have had probably 6 weeks or so of some intense meetings, workshops, focus groups, some of which you've participated in, and one-on-one interviews. In total, through that process, we've talked to more than 150 individuals, 70 organizations, and more. And right now, we actually have a public survey that is live and being pushed out for residents to be able to validate some directions and to gain some additional input. So we specifically set out to try and create an environment where we have as broad as possible opportunities for people to provide some feedback and feed in. But we do consider it representative and not comprehensive. But it was actually, I think, one of the positives of this entire process was giving people a chance to be heard and to be listened to for the challenges that they're experiencing. The phase that we're in right now, which is phase 2, which is about validation and policy direction. This is where we are building the framework of the strategy itself and figuring out what is there for us to really concentrate on. The validation is about, as we have that framework and as that is built, validating that direction with the advisory committee, with key industry individuals and senior leaders across the board in order for us to start building the policy and the final strategy through that. Obviously, phase 3 will come later when we have something to present and we can share what those findings are and move for approvals. What we are here today to talk about mostly, though, and I will probably go through these way too quickly, but feel free to stop and think. We're really here today to look at a bit of a summary of what we heard. These slides have been prepared by the consultant team, so they're not prepared by Billy and myself. We'll go through some of the notes. I will probably provide some commentary and context around some of them, but just know that this really is what we heard, and it may not be indicative of the final direction in the strategy, but we want to make sure that we're sharing what we heard and where how that might affect down the line of what we are doing. The full report of what we heard was actually shared in advance as well. It's 20+ pages, so if there's something that you would like to dive into there, the materials are available. We did hear quite a bit of good out of our sessions. Relatively, in comparison to some of the challenges that we'll get into a second, a relatively shorter list, but it's not because people didn't think that they were good. It's that everyone had a broad agreement of what is really great about Halifax. So that was actually a really interesting finding overall, but there's a really great sense of Halifax as a big, small city, friendly, cultural, very collaborative. The events here are benefiting from community spirit and a highly engaged audience, one of the most engaged audiences across Canada. A real sense that we punch above our weight, and I know that's a phrase that is used quite often when it comes to Halifax. I will say it was specific to say that we punch above our weight through people, not through systems. And there was a clear distinction in the notes about that. A general sense that this is a really great starting point, but not necessarily where we are right now. Where we are right now isn't necessarily a sustainable model without some of the enabling environments and the policies and infrastructure in place to try and spur some growth and some better outcomes. Part of this for us is to also understand that we really need to, as a place, to enable to grow and to not just this industry, but our place as a region. We really need to move from just celebrating success to trying or celebrating effort, I should say, to really trying to enable the success of these endeavors. And as much as we all love to pat ourselves on the back, there's some real foundational work for us to do here. Now the fun stuff. What's not so great? This was a much longer list. People had a lot to say and about what's not so great. The longer list doesn't mean that everything is a panic. A lot of the notes that you'll see in the full report are specific to particular producers or particular events and their particular experience. It may not still be relevant. The volume here was not necessarily because everyone was always saying the same things. It's because everyone has a slightly different experience of putting their business together. Just to highlight a few things here, and some of this might be obvious, but bears repeating. There is some infrastructure gaps that we know exist, aging venues and spaces that don't exist. The basic infrastructure that allow events to happen in a lot of places either does not exist or is not readily available, is not fit for purpose. And that's a pretty common comment across the board, from cultural events to music to sports as well. There is some lack of clear rationale behind the why we are doing events, why we are funding events, why we fund this event, not that event. And that's not unusual for people who are applying for funding, but it does present an opportunity for us to better articulate our particular goals and objectives and connect them through the industry. There was a real sense that commercial events need help, and they are existing in a much more high-risk environment in Halifax. And the note there to say is that it is not always about opening up funding programs to commercial events. Sometimes it's about infrastructure. Sometimes it's just about the regulatory environment. And sometimes it is about recognizing that a commercial event might be achieving our outcomes, the outcomes and the objectives that we want better than a nonprofit one, and that's okay. A lot of the times commercial events have the same or greater issues as nonprofits, but they don't necessarily have the backup. There's a lack of consistent tools and evaluation frameworks, and that's not a surprise. It's something that I think we've all probably talked about at some point. And a lot of that is about making sure that we're clear about why we're doing something, where we're going, and connecting that through as well. A lot of this that you see here is why we are actively building a framework that is based on purpose, clarity, and impact. And you'll hear us repeat that a lot over the certainly next few months, if not the next few years, as we're making that transition. Excuse me. Some more fun stuff, some more not so good. We do have some additional challenges here. We do have some challenges with rural events, even when they might be thriving on their own. And that's not alone, or that's not an issue that is specific to events, but the disconnect between some of our more rural partners and events and what is happening in the urban center is quite stark. There are processes that are inconsistent and create friction. This is especially true and specifically highlighted around some permitting issues, was really evident around fire and liquor control as well across the board. There is a bit of a lack of authentic cultural representation, and I think that's also part of growing as a city, a place, and a community. Sport and culture are not seen as equal in Halifax, and that was evident in pretty well every conversation that we had. And that is not necessarily seen as equal within our systems and processes, not seen as equal amongst audiences and community was the most stark. I think one of the biggest ones that we will tackle through strategy is that we are relying almost exclusively on personal relationships rather than formal structures, which means that the way that work is done is person to person, which is great until you have a new person. Or if someone changes a little bit or something adjusts. So the formal structures are about smoothing those particular edges. And something that'll come up quite a bit, there is, and in general terms, there is a culture of no, rather than a culture of let's figure it out together. And that rang true across all conversations and sessions that we held. Some of these things that when we're talking about not so good, it's sort of why we're trying to shift. And I know Billy and I talk about this quite a bit, but we're trying to shift from a patchwork of fixes into some intentional design and some real, what we hope are long-term solutions, or more, I think more accurately is to say some longer term direction to try and address some of these issues and hopefully create all brand new ones in 10 years because people are thriving and the city is booming. We did ask what utopia looked like, and we wanted to know what the ideal endpoint would be for the stakeholders that we spoke to, and we received a lot of feedback of what this looks like. The good news about this is that our stakeholders and people are highly engaged and still incredibly optimistic, and that is if anything, a really amazing place to start and a place to be. Really what they're looking for is an enabling environment that helps events flourish, not survive. Enable commercial revenue and making sure that we are not blocking those opportunities. Systems based on objectives and outcomes. Infrastructure built for purpose. Events reflecting the place, the people, and the priorities of HRM. This is fairly, not particularly surprising. If you look at what we just looked at as the not so good, this is essentially saying fix all of the not so good. I don't think there is much surprising on here, to be honest with you. The final question, or one of the final questions that we asked, what steps would we need to take over the next 5 to 10 years to achieve that utopia? What would progress look like? This is a really hard question to answer and to try and pick apart. There's some interesting notes here about some cultural change, some roles and responsibilities, and inclusion of some culture and some background. What's clear out of to sort of step out of these specific notes for a second. What's fairly clear is that the sector is ready for change and the appetite is there to try something new and to provide build the tools and systems that we need in order to thrive and make those choices. The how matters as much as the what. So it's not just what we are doing, but how we are going to achieve it. That was fairly clear in the conversations about utopia. And what's really evident in all of this is that success is really dependent on the systems that prioritize enabling the enablement and collaboration. So the things that we are doing behind the scenes to try and elevate these particular voices, provide paths for growth and opportunity, and things that we are doing, frankly, at a lot of times just to not stand in the way. Next slide. There are some points across the entire report, if you read it, that did stand out the most based on their volumes and the number of times that they were mentioned, and in some cases, the intensity of the need. And that's really hard to quantify, but some of these are fairly self-evident. And some of this is a little bit repeated, but our cultural heritage not often reflected. And that doesn't necessarily mean that To give an example, um, if you're holding an event and we want to put on music, is there a need? Why would we put French artists in a second space and a second smaller stage instead of folding them into the overall program? And that doesn't seem like a really big shift, but it is actually a really big shift to programming. That is what when we talk about cultural heritage not often reflected, some of it is just those simple things. Need for a solutions focused authorizing environment, and that is we know something that is keeping people up at night and really signaling a cultural shift. Infrastructure that is appropriate and of quality and appropriate for use and purpose and of quality for and maintenance in order to continue to provide the foundation and the work that it should. We do have some specific areas of strength that were really evident in both sport and culture, specifically on water sports, which is not surprising, and music was particularly evident across all sessions. These kind of provide the starting point of a roadmap for some clear paths for larger scale development and delivery. A change from outputs to outcomes is really one of the biggest notes that come out of here, and I think will remain a key theme of the strategy that we're putting together in the framework that we're putting together. I think what's clear about what we heard the loudest, and sort of to wrap this up, people want to do better, and our industry wants to do better. They recognize overall that the struggle and the risk is largely up to them, and they're looking for some help in ways and systems and processes that can make that a little bit easier. They want to grow. They recognize that some of them probably shouldn't. They also recognize that some of them some of their events may have run their course, and that's okay. What's really clear and what's in all of these notes and in this process is that it really is up to us to build the conditions that let them grow and let them thrive. And I think that is our challenge over the next, I'd love to say next couple of weeks, but frankly, it's probably the next 10 years of work. One more slide. So what's next? We're currently drafting a plan on a page. This is our strategic framework. It's our starting point for writing the strategy. We're developing that based on the engagement, based on research that we have. That will need to be validated. The direction will need to be validated with community, municipal, and provincial partners. We're, going to have to go through another period of some engagement on developing that particular framework. And our hope is that we'll be able to come back to this group and to regional council with a finished strategy in due course, and something that we hope that we're able to look to for the next 5 to 10 years of building and growing Halifax. It's really nice, and just my final note, there's a theme that has kind of emerged through some of the work that I know we're doing in event attraction right now, in marketing through this process and others. It is absolutely astounding that Halifax residents, leaders and political leaders and community leaders, our producers and people who work in this industry, audiences and all, they continue to show up. And that is more than you can say about pretty well any other place. The enthusiasm is palpable. The absolute desire to do good and to do better is really, really present. What we hope is that we can take that strength and the strategy can help to amplify it. Billy, I don't know if you have any last notes.
Oh, that was excellent, Mark. Thank you so much for this. It's great.
That's amazing, Mark. Thanks very much. So, listen, we'll turn things over to the committee who might have some questions for Mark and Billy. See, quiet here. Oh, good. Councillor White.
I'm just thinking, do you have a sense that we can be successful in facing these challenges at this time? I know just at the beginning.
Yeah, I think I believe there's been years, especially at a task force level, of things that have not been questioned as much as they could have been. I believe there's obviously been questions around municipal services and how could we find ways of funding those. I think there's new lanes potentially opening up as we find new money and we start to be able to do different things. So I think there's on the 1 to 2 year achievable plan, there's permitting and minor issues that we've come across through these sessions and engagements that we didn't really know about actually. So there's a few that we can knock right away, but there's definitely a long-term piece when it comes to the infrastructure. Don't get me wrong. It's an uphill battle, as you guys know at council every week. But I think there's some elements that need to happen and have been sort of dated infrastructure that we've all been thinking about for some time. So I really believe that in this next 5 to 10 years, a lot of these key pieces to achieve a multi-sport game can happen.
Thanks, Billy.
Anybody else?
Me.
Natasha, back in the weeds. Natasha.
I know, I'm trying to pop out of the weeds. I don't really have so much a question, but I got to be part of one of the sessions, and just to Mark and Ross, just really well done. The session was it was incredibly well run. It was great to give input, obviously, for food and beverage events. Always, integrate and play a big part. With events and food and beverage, they align really well. For the Restaurant Association, we're obviously quite invested because we do events as well. But yeah, I just wanted to say the sessions were really great. I know the one piece there, just to put it out there, and Billy, you touched on it, but in terms of like permits and the liquor side of things, that's something our association's going to be quite heavily involved in and working on. Meeting with alcohol and gaming this week, because I think there's just a lot of opportunity there too to make it overall easier to run events. So anyways, that was just my 2 cents. Well done.
That's excellent, Natasha. Yeah, I've actually started the process based off the Halifax Music Festival the week that's coming up. We're looking at really, we went and did a jurisdictional scan through the Municipal Event Alliance, and right now, currently, about 9 out of 10 provinces have site-wide licenses, we've realized now. And in the last few years, almost all of them have come on board, including PEI in New Brunswick. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Nova Scotia has set precedents. Not like we're setting precedent to do this, but it's something between culture and sport that it seems a bit of a different licensing mechanism. So we're gonna get to the bottom of that hopefully as well, and could absolutely use your support when we're going forward to the province about this. I think they're very receptive, it seems so far. They just want to chat it out. So it's one of those, I think it's a major step of this actually to achieve in that first year or two would be excellent.
Should also say that we did specifically ask people to not limit their comments to things that are directly impacted by HRM, but that could be provincial or federal. The notes that were generated from these sessions are actually going to be used for the provincial strategy. And it was very important for some of this feedback to be captured to make sure that that was a clear message when they start their work in a couple of months.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, I don't see anybody else. I've got lots of questions and comments. So thanks very much, guys. And no surprise, Mark and Billy, I have lots of comments. But the public survey that's for the residents, can you make sure you send that to us and we can push it out, and I can make sure our council colleagues push it out their newsletters and such and their social media feeds. So if you can send that to me, we can see if we can get more people involved from that perspective. So in no particular order, it's interesting about infrastructure. So what time is it now? It's 10:09. CPED just started. In today's CPED meeting, there's the Wanderers block is on the agenda and the work that staff have been doing. Derek Martin from the Wanderers did a presentation a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, on that site, and so as soon as we finish up here, I'm gonna go downstairs. I'm not on that committee, but I have an interest. So, when we look at events, that infrastructure, those infrastructure gaps, it's quite evident, right? And so I think this information, it's too bad that this information is not in front of, even with the information so far, is not in front of that committee as they're making that decision, because the left hand may not know what the right hand is doing.
Yeah.
So that committee down there is going to make a decision, however they make their decision, to direct it to council. So hopefully, whatever that decision is, and it gets to council, there's an in-between piece. We can at least educate them, Mark and Billy, what we've done so far. And I may even suggest that you do this presentation so far to the 3 community councils, so that all councillors know what's going on. Because right now they don't know what's going on. And so being able to go and do 10 minutes at a community council and say, hey, we're doing this strategy. This is what we're looking at. This is what we found so far. And you're not asking for any action other than be aware, because I'm really worried about that left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. Can you share with me I was intrigued by the sport and culture not seen as equal. Can you elaborate? What does that mean? I'm not sure if I'm clear on that. It may be clear to others, but not to me.
Yeah. I would say what we heard the most from that was a lot of times actually coming from an alcohol and gaming perspective, also a permitting perspective with closed streets and open spaces. From a task force level, even on a municipal side, not just provincial, I think what happens is, for some reason, we understand sport quite well. So a clear example that got brought up was, I could go to a Mooseheads game right now with my kids. I could have 2 drinks, one on one lap, one on this lap. They're sitting right next to you in a lit up space. The alcohol's right in front of you, and they're allowed to sit there the whole game. They don't have to go up and hide in a cage. They don't have to go behind a rope somewhere. The other side, that you go to a concert, you have to go into a caged zone, leave your person who's under 19, and now you've left your child alone.
Okay.
In that, I mean, people probably don't have to do that, but they won't do that. So what happens is, they just don't have a site-wide license. And so what they're seeing happen is just, it's a bit of hypocrisy going on. And people are saying, why is concerts getting focused on so hard versus, the Wanderers game in behind the net, when people are having a great time as well. And, you can have your kid in that zone as well if you really want. I think it's just a general perception that the culture community was feeling that sport was getting the treatment that the rest of the country has already solved at culture and sport.
Interesting.
We're still sort of stuck on one side of the story when it comes to alcohol. Then when it comes to permitting through fire and licensing, it just seems that we can get our head around a soccer field in the way that a couple tents can sit into the area to keep the players out of the sun, versus, coming into an event site and looking at tents that are 10 by 10 with no walls and asking for them to have an exit sign in them and a fire extinguisher, and adding like $150 to $200 to your event bill times 10 tents. It starts to add up. And I think what people are saying is, some of these barriers, some of these rules might have just been put in place and nobody's willing to question them. And it might be time to start just having to take a pause and start looking at some of these pieces that are just easy fixes.
Yeah, interesting.
I would go a little bit, I would actually add on to that a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
The difference in infrastructure investment between sport and culture is stark. The way that sport development, sport infrastructure, and sport space development happens versus how cultural spaces are developed. They went pretty deep into the way that we value sport as a community as well, over culture. That for a community that speaks of music and culture so widely, it is much harder for people to understand. Much harder for people to understand going to a cultural event or a theater than it is to buying a ticket to a hockey game or something. There's some audience issues in there and things as well. So the difference between sport and culture went very, very deep, and it was fairly stark across the board.
Interesting, very interesting. And yeah, really. Okay. What else do I have here? So infrastructure built for purpose. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. So this is the idea that the best available compromise isn't necessarily the thing that people need or want. I think the best way to look at this, and this might be coming a little bit out of what we heard to provide some context, but building a the potential of a new pool facility, for instance. Are we building a pool for the community use? Or are we building a pool for the community to use plus events and competitions for 10 days a year? And the requirements of having a pool facility that can accommodate the needs of competition and events mean some spectator areas, mean some extra training facility, the training rooms, some extra change rooms, but does not necessarily prevent the community use. Trying to take an arena, for instance, and trying to put a tournament or an event into a space that isn't built for it. On the cultural side, the Salter lot down on the waterfront that is used constantly for events, and still struggling to be able to get, after years and years, struggling to be able to get shore power and water and services that are there that can't be unlocked, or a space that isn't a parking lot.
Okay. It's interesting, the example you use for the pool. So, the Centennial Pool, as we know, in Councillor White's area, it's past its best before date, as we know. They can't do national events on there. But if you had a pool that you designed it for national events, and even if it's only for 10 days a year, those national events help to grow the sport. Awareness sport. So, for the rest of the year, it benefits, the average family. So that's really interesting. In your steps to utopia, political leaders are strong advocates for events. So that's telling me the perception is political leaders are not strong advocates for events now, consistently.
I don't think that it's saying that leaders aren't strong advocates currently. I think it's saying that what they want, or what they're saying to us, is that within the industry, they'd like stronger voices within the industry. So that's not necessarily councillors. Within within the world of council, it might be advocating for becoming advocates, not for necessarily for the strength of events, but the importance of events to building community and building place. It might be advocating the use and understanding the use of major events when we're talking about longer term or larger community or regional goals. I know transit has been a thing that's been talked about a number of times. Being an advocate doesn't necessarily mean just saying that we want to put more money in, but it is about saying there's a tool here to be used. And if we just support them and work with them and support them, that we might be able to actually do some really great things. So rather than saying we do events because they're fun, why do we do events? Well, they can help us achieve certain goals and outcomes, and how do we our objectives, and how do we utilize them for that? Well,
that's interesting. That leads to my next point on your slide deck, when you said HRM clear about why we have events. And so that's surprising to me that again, the perception is it's not clear that why we have events. So it's interesting, Billy, because I think there needs to be, if those last two things are true. I look to staff to help educate. When I look at HRM, we have new counselors on the table that are first-term counselors that are getting their feet wet, very wet after last night, Laura, Billy. But there's an opportunity from staffing point of view, Billy, from your team to educate and say, look, these are the events and here's the benefits to our community for these events. So I'm surprised. I know that Mark, Billy, and Ross and even Natasha understand the value of events to the city. But I think maybe some work coming from a staffing perspective would help with that, in my opinion. Almost done here. A couple more. Can you talk about what you heard a lot, the outputs versus the outcomes? Can you explain that a little bit?
I can. I'm becoming a bit of an expert in describing this the last couple of weeks, but the idea being here that if you set the goal or intention of what you would like to come from an event, it could be economics, it could be a particular time of year, it could be community color, it could be activation, it could be celebrating community, it could be particular goals with transit or anything, whatever that happens to be. Those are outcomes, not outputs. When we paint with a sort of single color of output, and in our case, we only use economic impact. While it's important, there might be some other goals there as well. So if we start the conversation with understanding why we are supporting or doing something that is saying there's an economic argument, but there's also some community arguments, there's some sustainability arguments, then we can understand much clearer why, what we are getting out of, and I don't want to use specific examples here, but what we are getting out of or what we are trying to achieve through hosting or having the event, whether it's one time or recurring.
Yeah, it's interesting because we were going through the exercise today at the municipality now of our strategic focus and our plan and strategy. And I think I shared with you, Ross, that, what was missing from that was events. I didn't see it anywhere, but it's now part of it because I brought it up. But, so I go back to that education piece, Billy. Was there no discussion about low-hanging fruit? There were some things you mentioned like permitting and the liquor piece, and and I know we talked about before, Billy. The use of being forced to use police for trafficking and those kinds of things. And so I think there's a lot of low-hanging fruit we could address, but in these sessions there wasn't any of those types of discussions throughout your presentation. But which of these are low-hanging fruits that with just a little bit of energy and focus we could resolve, I think, like that?
Yeah, so it might not have came out exactly in each one of those sentences, but when you see them talking about the forum and the group that is supposed to be the one-stop shop, they're referring those sections are referring to very like the little details that we heard as well. So we didn't get into like the bullet points in this presentation, but we absolutely heard, especially from the bids. So we did our session with the bids on, the ability to close streets, the ability to deroute transit, and then also just the police fees in general on watching barricades for smaller streets. Yeah. People noted that there has been some updates, but those updates have been after, 3 times we've come to council to try and change that and try to get the province on board. So that absolutely did come up. And I'd say the 2 that really did was the ability to close streets with ease, and just the overall price of police as well, which we've heard our entire career. Unfortunately, that's where we sit on the hourly wage right now.
The permitting and the liquor piece is frustrating. I go back to Memorial Cup. Being forced to have to, you say it's easier for sporting, but to be able to be forced to put up that fencing on Argyle Street because of liquor was ridiculous. Truly ridiculous. Well, you should be able to walk from one end of Argyle Street to the other, and when we close down the street for an event like that, and not be forced to put up stupid, ugly fencing. And so what if your kid's with you? So frustrating. My last point was your theme. I'm glad to hear about the theme. That the residents and leaders and industry and audiences continue to show. We show up. I mean, I think that's quite evident, and it is unique, right? I think I've been involved in events across the country, and you have pockets of that, but we continue to show up, and I think that's, that's our special sauce. We've been using that term a lot, but that's our special sauce that we continue to show up. So, Mark, thanks very much. And sorry that I this is something I'm passionate about and excited about, and has great benefit to our municipality. So I appreciate the presentation and the check-in. Let me know if you're doing events, and if any of us, if there's any value for, if you're doing other engagement for us to show up, whether it's just for a short period or for the whole thing, please take advantage of it. You've invited me to, I think, a couple, and I just haven't been able to line up my schedule, but I'm there. Any other comments from anyone else, and then we can close?
I just wanted to say that Centennial Pool is a valued community asset. If it's not great for events, that's okay.
That is 100% correct, because I'm also in that community. So
Okay.
Okay, thanks very much, Mark and Billy. Let's look at the rest of the agenda here. So do this formally. There's no information items brought forward. There's no reports from staff. And there's no added items, I believe, Madam Chair. Is that correct? So date of the next meeting is August the 13th, so we can call for adjournment. I am going downstairs now to CPED to see what that conversation. Ross, have you been involved in that at all? That conversation about the Wanderers block?
Yeah, we have, and I would probably say that Mark, maybe even more so than myself.
Good.
Yeah, just for the committee's benefit, there was as part of the work that's being done overall in this process, there was a pretty thorough review of all of the community's assets and how they fit into the picture. So I think your point earlier about having CPED or rest of council or the rest of the community at least aware of that work, I think is incredibly important, because if we do sort of not only could there be advice provided on a specific investment, there's also a context for prioritization of everything that could be done, and there are some potential synergies of aligning a couple of needs together. So your point was a really great one.
Well, thanks very much, everyone. Really appreciate your time. I apologize for a little bit of delay in getting started here, but we'll keep at it. That's great, and hopefully